Welcome Vintage Hollywood Archive. Mamie Van Doren is an American actress, model, and singer who is best remembered for her role in the rock and roll exploitation film Untamed Youth. She's also noted for being one of the first actresses to try to replace Marilyn Monroe's look. The three M's were Marilyn, Mamie, and Mansfield. In other films, she wore sweaters, low-cut blouses, form-fitting gowns, and bikinis that were too daring for the time to emphasize her sex symbol image. Was Mamie Van Doren really a bad girl to the core? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to my channel. Mamie Van Doren slept with half of Hollywood's heartthrobs. Frequently mentioned in the same breath as Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield, Mamie Van Doren is a 1950s sex symbol, actress, and bad girl to the core. On and off screen, she exuded sexuality and slept with half of Hollywood's heartthrobs. Yet, despite the comparisons, Mamie was the antithesis of Marilyn. Instead of sweet, demure innocence, Mamie was loud, proud, ever so naughty, and she didn't give two hoots. During the famous Jackrabbit Slim scene in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, Uma Thurman asks John Travolta to grab the attention of one of the waitresses so they may order some meal. She identifies the waitress as Marilyn Monroe, pointing to one of the staff members who is dressed up as a 1950s movie star. "That's not Marilyn Monroe," Vincent Vega, John Travolta's character, remarks. "That's Mamie Van Doren." Correct. You cannot and should not combine the two. Of course, Marilyn's career was enveloped in tragedy, virtually impregnated with it. Her beautiful face was usually always shrouded in a thin veil of misery. Mamie Van Doren, on the other hand, is not one of them. She is smiling, laughing, and joyful in all of her vintage images. Her grin is still natural now, and it comes not just from having lived a full life, not without struggle of course. She has been honest about battling her own depression, but also from having lived a wonderful life. It's also not just a matter of savoring good fortune. It's a declaration of pride in what you can do for yourself. It would be simple to expect Mamie Van Doren to act her age, because she still poses clothless and speaks candidly and fearlessly about sexuality and its beneficial role in life. However, her demeanor and viewpoint lead us to ponder another incomparably more intriguing question. What does it mean to act one's age? My parents never considered their age, didn't even mention it, and didn't pay attention to it. I wasn't even conscious of my age until others started talking about it, and believe they do so out of fear, she adds. If they bring up your age, it's because they're worried about getting older, or if they're going to make it as far as I have. Mamie appears to be portraying her age as precisely as she believes she's supposed to act it, as she dances into her late 70s. It's great for her. This is a life that has taken her far beyond the South Dakota farmlands where she was born. A life that has included Clark Gable, Joan Crawford, Robert Mitchum, Marilyn and Jane Mansfield, Richard Nixon, and Anna Nicole Smith. This narrative isn't so much about glitz and glitter as it is about attitude, self-awareness, and treating the world as you would like to be treated. To some extent, Mamie Van Doren's narrative is one of self-invention, but it's also one of optimism and opportunity. She claimed, "I won't even harm an ant. You never know what you'll be when you wake up." And that's a terrific hook for a narrative about a person who is always looking forward to the next nice thing. Even at an early age, she was determined to live. Jane Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe, two of her contemporaries, died tragically young. It's nearly over when they're in their 20s, and then you got someone else coming up, and it's extremely difficult, she adds. In the 1950s, she was grouped with Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield as one of the three M's, a terrible advertising effort that seemed designed to steal individuals of their uniqueness, and which also foreshadowed today's ubiquitous Benefers, Brangelinas, and Tomcats. Mamie is the only member of that group who has survived, and she is one of the few colorful individuals from the 1950s who has managed to carve out a distinct place in the 21st century. She was sophisticated and intelligent enough to navigate her way through Hollywood, and she was certainly beautiful and talented enough to belong there, and then to make international films with international stars. And finally, when the time came, to embrace the internet, where her personality now shines through. She traveled to Vietnam in the early 1970s, during the wars, and her own darkest hours, and went directly to the front lines, where few other performers had gone before. Those trips had an influence that is still felt today. But first, we must return. In a moment, we'll get to all the movie stars, movie sets, and nightclubs. But going back to Mamie Van Doren's roots is important because it appears that the most enduring stars we have, the ones we connect with the most, are those whose early lives had an earthiness to them, the experience of the everyday, rather than those whose early lives were manufactured on the studio lot or in the recording studio. Our heroes are the people who began out as day laborers, chefs, and soldiers, and dreamed something completely different for themselves while staring out the window of their office or kitchen. And so we travel back to South Dakota of the Depression. Her mother, Lucille, was a stay-at-home mom, while her father, Warner Cal, worked extremely hard as a laborer, mechanic, and construction worker. But she spent her earliest years of life with her grandparents, who provided her with decent food from the farm, but no citrus. A lemon was like gold, she recalled, and no indoor plumbing. Growing up in that type of setting was fascinating at the time. There were Indian arrowheads all over the area. It wasn't just about putting in long hours every day. There were glimpses of a bigger world, as well as a type of stardom that was specific to that era. We had Bonnie and Clyde blowing up farmhouses all around us, Dillinger robbing banks, and the Native Americans were also there. The 1930s in South Dakota were a thrilling time. Her grandpa, who was of German origin, listened to Hitler speeches on the radio and Joe Louis fights, and everyone around her worked hard. It's a lesson she'll never forget. They went after the horses to plow at 4:30 a.m., since we didn't have a John Deere tractor. And I'd have to go a mile through 40 acres to deliver them lunch. And one farm would aid the other or they wouldn't be able to exist, she explained. Greta Garbo and Marilyn Dietrich were her heroines, two trailblazers who, in their own unique ways, lived to be 100 years old. Joan Lucille Olander was Mamie's given name when she was born in 1931, and she recalls knowing from that minute on that she was exceptional and gifted in some manner. I got a lot of attention without doing anything, she said. She also understood that there was more to life than the Badlands of South Dakota. At the time, you thought you'd get married, have children, and then be a stay-at-home mom. But I didn't think that was a good fit for me. I watched what my grandma went through, and that wasn't anything I wanted. It certainly wasn't what she got. Her family relocated to California during World War II, and in the summer of 1949, at the age of 18, she began to attract the attention of the appropriate people. They were sponsoring a beauty pageant when I was staying at a hotel with my mother, and I felt I'd never win since there were some lovely girls. I did, however, win and was crowned Miss Palm Springs. I received a lot of publicity when I was Miss Palm Springs, and that's when it all started. Howard Hughes happened to be in the crowd on the night she was crowned. Hughes, who had controlled RKO Pictures since the end of the silent period and had been creating pictures since the end of the silent era, contacted Mamie and invited her to visit the studio. I was going to work there in the summer months, and that's when I felt I was going to be in the movies. I received scads of exposure for it and became very, very popular, she said of winning the Miss 8-Ball pageant the same year. Monroe had won the same pageant the year before. Joan Lucille Olander was renamed Mamie Van Doren, a combination of Mamie Eisenhower and a movie actor named Mark Van Doren, and the new nickname appeared to fit her and the central environment of the day well. Hughes put her in a movie called Jet Pilot, starring John Wayne and Janet Leigh, which was directed by Joseph von Sternberg, who was Dietrich's mentor. Sternberg had me ascending this huge ladder, and I only had a few phrases before they cut it out. Despite the fact that the picture was shot in 1951, it was not released until 1957, turning out to be von Sternberg's final feature. She was still earning little parts, including one in D.W. Griffith's Footlight Varieties. However, soon after Jet Pilot, Hughes cast her in His Kind of Woman, a 1951 film starring Jane Russell and Robert Mitchum. Mitchum appears to have triggered some recollections. And I was only a kid, and he had me come to his dressing room a lot to speak, and he was so sweet. She does, however, remember Mitchum as a great performer. I'd simply sit back and observe, and throughout those 3 months of working on those moments, I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I was thinking at the time that I needed to work hard to become a good actress. Going to New York in the 1950s may have felt like a natural professional move. Mamie went on to work as a showgirl. However, she admitted that she was neither a dancer nor a model. She recalled, "I couldn't be arrested. I met Sammy Fain, who was a prolific Broadway writer. I stated that I would return home. He gave me Jimmy Hughes' phone number, so I told him I'd contact him when I got back to California, which I did. And he said, "Come on up." He had a lovely home, and he loved me right away, so I performed all of his songs, which he had a lot of. This was the years 1951, 1952, and January 1953. He was my Svengali. He wanted to be called my Svengali, and he told me that I was going to be a movie star. Back then, movie stars were supposed to be multi-talented. Musicals were still being made in Hollywood in the early 1950s, the genre's final golden period, and singing, dancing, and dictation were necessary for survival. "I want you to go day and night, McHugh said Mamie when she was sent to acting school. As a result, I did a lot of theater, as well as day and night school. I was working on Clifford Odets's The Big Knife, then on Terry Moore's Come Back, Little Sheba, when Universal contacted and said they were working on a film called Forbidden, starring Tony Curtis and Joanne Dru. They needed someone immediately quickly, according to the screenplay, which called for a nightclub singer in Macau. I had to study You Belong to Me because they wanted me to sing it. I have to walk in and perform flawlessly. They had to put nails on me because I had bitten my nails down, and they were going to do my hair and fix my face, and they had this gown sent over from MGM, an old Jean Harlow dress, and a pair of white Joan Crawford shoes. And I was so nervous they had to put eyelashes on me. And they couldn't even put those on because I was blinking so much, she said. However, everything is timing. The sales team from Universal's New York office was at the studio that day, it turned out. They recognized me and offered me a contract. It was a 2-year contract with options, and I stayed for 5 years, she added. And you can still hear the pride in her voice as she recalls the event. I was making $300 a week. I did a lot of sensual pictures after I did Playboy. I really thought I was blessed. I thought, well, here's my body, and I don't know what it's going to look like 10 years, 30 years from now if I'm still hanging around. I'm going to take pictures and be able to look at them when I get older, and see how I stack up to the ones then. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video. Mamie Van Doren was really different from the rest of the 3 M's. Mamie consciously made sure that her life would not end in tragedy, not like Marilyn Monroe. In Monroe's case, we can often talk about some interesting decisions, like how she ended up with Arthur Miller. Watch this video and we reveal the details about it.